The grand halls of the Zolkareth royal palace were silent, except for the soft hum of energy shields guarding the entrance. It was a place of power, where only the most important leaders of the galaxy gathered. Tonight, however, something unexpected was about to happen. Something that would change everything. Princess Sira Zolkareth, heir to the mighty empire, stood near her private chamber's grand window, looking at the twin moons of her homeworld. She was deep in thought, her mind occupied with the upcoming peace summit with the United Terran Federation, the rising human civilization that had taken the galaxy by surprise. Many in the Empire believed that humans were reckless and weak, unworthy of true interstellar diplomacy. Others, however, whispered that humans were dangerous, capable of things no other species could achieve. Xera wasn't sure what to believe. She had never met a human before. She turned away from the window, her violet eyes reflecting the golden glow of the floating lamps in her chamber. She was about to call her guards when a flash of blue light erupted in the center of the room. The air crackled with energy. Sparks danced across the marble floor. In the blink of an eye, a tall figure appeared out of thin air, landing in a defensive crouch. A human. Xera's breath caught in her throat. The man had short, dark hair, sharp eyes, and a muscular build. He wore a black armored suit with a small insignia on his shoulder, the mark of the United Terran Federation Special Forces. A combat knife was strapped to his leg, and his right hand hovered over his belt, where a sleek pistol rested. He looked around, alert, like a predator in an unfamiliar jungle. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, "Inturudr," Xera's voice rang out. Her royal guards burst into the room, their weapons raised. Their energy blades hummed, ready to strike. The human, Captain Elias Drake, didn't move. His sharp gaze flicked between the guards and the princess, assessing the situation in seconds. He knew one wrong move could get him killed. "Wait," he said, raising his hand slowly. "I don't know how I got here." Xera narrowed her eyes. "Lies. You appear in my private chamber, armed, and you expect me to believe you are lost." Drake took a slow breath. He had been in dangerous situations before, but nothing like this. One moment, he had been investigating the security breach near the Peace Summit Hall. Then, suddenly, a bright flash, and now he was here. "I swear," he said, keeping his voice calm but firm, "this wasn't my plan. Something, or someone, sent me here." The guard stepped closer, their weapons inches from his chest. Xera studied him carefully. Humans were said to be deceptive, but something in his eyes told her he was telling the truth. Still, it didn't change the fact that he was in her most secure chamber. Before she could respond, a loud beeping sound echoed through the room. Drake instinctively tapped a small device on his wrist. A voice, mechanical and urgent, spoke through his earpiece. "Warning. Unauthorized teleportation detected. System override in progress. Data compromised." His jaw tightened. Someone had set him up. But who? And why? Xera heard the message too. Her expression changed slightly. Not fear, but realization. "Guards, lower your weapons," she commanded. The warriors hesitated. "Princess." "Now." Reluctantly, they obeyed, though their fingers remained close to their blades. Xera took a slow step toward Drake. "If what you say is true, then you are a victim of sabotage." Drake exhaled, relieved that she wasn't ordering his immediate execution. "That makes two of us." She tilted her head. "Explain." Drake straightened. "I was stationed at the Peace Summit as security. Someone hacked my teleportation beacon and threw me into your chamber. My guess, someone wanted me out of the way." Xera frowned. The Peace Summit was delicate. A single mistake could ignite war. Then, another realization hit her. What if this wasn't a mistake? What if someone had wanted a human to appear in the princess's chambers, an event that could be seen as an assassination attempt? Xera turned sharply. "Guards, seal the chamber. No one enters or leaves until we have answers." Drake watched her carefully. Despite the tension, he couldn't help but admire her composure. Any other leader might have panicked. She, however, was thinking ahead. Zera met his gaze. "Captain Drake, if we are both victims of this, then we have a common enemy." Drake nodded. Agreed. A tense silence filled the air. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was the beginning of something much bigger. A conspiracy that stretched across the stars, threatening not just the peace summit, but the fate of both humanity and the Zolkareth Empire itself. And they were right in the middle of it. The chamber doors sealed shut with a deep metallic thud. A tense silence followed. Captain Elias Drake glanced at the alien princess standing before him. Princess Sira Zolkareth was regal, her violet eyes sharp with intelligence. She didn't look afraid, despite the fact that an armed human soldier had just appeared in her private chamber. Drake wasn't sure whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. The Zolkareth royal guards still stood nearby, their hands hovering over their weapons. The tension in the room was like a tightly coiled spring. One wrong move and everything could explode. Zera broke the silence first. "You claim you were sent here against your will," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Who would do such a thing?" Drake exhaled. "If I knew that, I wouldn't be standing here." Zera studied him for a long moment. Humans were said to be unpredictable, but this one, he didn't seem like a liar. His eyes were steady, his stance confident but not aggressive. A soldier, a survivor. Finally, she turned to her guards. "No one is to enter or leave until we find the truth." The guards hesitated but obeyed. Drake crossed his arms. "So what now? Do you throw me in a dungeon?" Zera tilted her head. "I should. A human, uninvited, in my private chamber. The laws demand punishment." Drake tensed, preparing for the worst. "But then," she smirked. "But something tells me you won't go quietly," she added. Drake gave a small grin. "You'd be right about that." Zera's smirk vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You claim you were sent here by force. If that's true, then someone wanted you removed from the peace summit." Drake nodded. "And I think you were a target too." Zera narrowed her eyes. "Explain." Drake took a step closer, ignoring the way the guard stiffened at his movement. "Think about it. If a human operative appears in your chamber, unannounced, armed, what would that look like?" Zera's eyes widened slightly. She realized what he was saying. "It would look like an assassination attempt." Drake nodded. "And what happens if the Empire believes humanity tried to kill its princess?" Her expression darkened. "It would mean war." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The pieces were falling into place. Someone had engineered this situation. Someone who wanted the peace talks to fail. Zera turned to her guards. "We must investigate this immediately." One of the guards, Commander Vaikar, stepped forward. "Princess, with all due respect, this could be a trick." His gaze flicked to Drake. "Humans are known for deception." Drake sighed. "You know, I can hear you, right?" Zera lifted a hand. "Enough." She looked at Drake again. "There is one way to prove if you are telling the truth." Drake raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what's that?" Her voice was steady. "You will take the ordeal of truth." The guard stiffened at her words. Drake, however, just frowned. "That doesn't sound fun." Zera's expression remained unreadable. "The ordeal of truth is an ancient test, one that proves honor and strength." Drake sighed. "Let me guess. If I fail, I die." Zera nodded. Drake rubbed the back of his neck. "Great." Zera took a step forward. "But if you succeed, it will show that you are worthy of trust, that you are no coward, that you are not a liar." Drake met her gaze. Something in her tone told him that this wasn't just about proving himself. This was about earning her respect. He exhaled sharply. "All right, Princess. I'll take your little test." Zera gave a slight nod. "Very well. The ordeal begins at dawn." The next morning, Drake stood in the royal arena, surrounded by towering walls of black stone. The air was thick with tension. Across from him stood 3 Zolkareth warriors, their armor gleaming under the morning light. Each one was at least a foot taller than him, their weapons humming with energy. They were the finest fighters in the Empire. Drake rolled his shoulders. So what are the rules? Commander Vekar, standing nearby, smirked. Simple. You fight. You survive. You win. Drake chuckled. Of course. The gong rang, and the first warrior charged. Drake sidestepped at the last second, his human reflexes faster than expected. The warrior swung his blade, but Drake ducked and countered with a precise strike to the ribs. The warrior staggered back, surprised. The second warrior lunged forward, aiming for Drake's head. Drake dropped low, sweeping the alien's legs out from under him. The crowd gasped. The third warrior didn't wait. He unleashed a rapid flurry of strikes, pushing Drake on the defensive. For a moment, it seemed like the human would fall. But then, Drake smirked. In a burst of speed, he dodged the next strike, grabbed the warrior's arm, and flicked him over his shoulder. The warrior landed hard on the ground, groaning. The arena fell silent. Drake exhaled and wiped a bit of sweat from his brow. Is that all you've got? Zera, watching from her throne, was stunned. She had expected him to fight well, but not this well. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. This human was not ordinary. Drake stood tall, his breathing steady. He had won. Zera's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. Captain Ilias Drake, she said, you have passed the ordeal of truth. Drake smirked. Told you I wasn't a liar. But deep in the shadows, the true enemy watched. The conspiracy was far from over. The royal arena was silent. Captain Ilias Drake stood in the center, breathing heavily. Around him, 3 of the Zolkareth Empire's best warriors lay on the ground, defeated. He had won. On the royal balcony, Princess Xera de Zolkareth watched him with unreadable eyes. She had expected this human to struggle. She had expected him to lose. But instead, he had fought like a true warrior, proving his strength in a way no outsider ever had. The crowd of nobles and warriors whispered among themselves. A human had passed the ordeal of truth. This had never happened before. Drake wiped sweat from his brow and looked up at Xera. So, do I get a prize or just more fights? A small smile tugged at Xera's lips, but she quickly hid it. She stood and raised her hand. Captain Ilias Drake, she announced, you have proven yourself worthy. The murmurs grew louder. Some of the nobles looked uneasy. Others looked impressed. Commander Vekar, standing nearby, was not pleased. He stepped forward, his jaw tight. Princess, you cannot trust this human so easily. The ordeal is a test of strength, but it does not prove his innocence. Drake sighed. You guys really don't like giving compliments, do you? Xera's sharp eyes turned to Vekar. You doubt my judgment. Vekar hesitated. I only mean to remind you, Princess, that he was found in your private chambers. That cannot be ignored. Drake crossed his arms. I already told you. I didn't go there by choice. Someone sent me. Xera nodded. And now it is time to find out who. She turned to her royal guards. Take Captain Drake to the War Council chamber. We will question him further, properly. Drake sighed, but didn't resist as the guards led him away. The War Council chamber. The chamber was large and dimly lit. A massive table sat in the center, surrounded by high-ranking Zolkareth officials. Some were dressed in royal robes, others in battle armor. These were the leaders of the Empire, the ones who held the true power. Drake sat in the middle of the room, surrounded by guards. Xera stood at the head of the table. An older noble, Lord Kelsar, leaned forward. His golden eyes narrowed at Drake. Human, do you understand the danger of your presence here? Drake smirked. Oh, believe me, I do. Another noble scoffed. This is a waste of time. We should execute him now and send a message to the United Terran Federation. Zera's voice was cold. We will do no such thing. Not until we know the truth. She turned to Drake. You said you were teleported into my chamber against your will. Do you have proof? Drake tapped a small device on his wrist. A holographic screen appeared, showing security logs. This is my mission data, he said. I was stationed at the Peace Summit when my teleport beacon malfunctioned. The officials leaned forward, studying the data. Zera's eyes narrowed. This is not a simple malfunction. The signal was hijacked. Drake nodded. Exactly. Someone with high-level access reprogrammed my teleport signal. They wanted me out of the way, and they wanted to frame humanity for an attack on you. The room fell silent. Vakar frowned. Who would do such a thing? Drake's expression darkened. Someone who wants war. Zera's gaze swept across the room. We must find out who is behind this, before it is too late. But before anyone could respond, a sudden explosion shook the palace. The assassins strike. The lights flickered. The ground rumbled beneath them. Alarms blared across the palace. Drake was on his feet instantly. What the hell was that? A royal guard ran into the chamber, breathing hard. Princess, there has been an attack in the eastern wing. The security systems are compromised. Zera's eyes sharpened. Who is attacking us? The guard hesitated. We don't know. They wear no markings, but they fight with military precision. Drake's stomach tightened. Professional mercenaries. Zera turned to her guards. Defend the palace. Secure the High Council. She turned to Drake. Can you fight? Drake smirked. Do you really need to ask? Zera tossed him a spare energy blade. Then prove yourself again, human. Drake caught the weapon, feeling its hum in his hand. Then the doors burst open, and the assassins rushed in. The battle in the halls. The assassins wore black combat armor, their faces hidden beneath helmets. They moved fast, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Drake reacted instantly. He ducked under a plasma blast and slashed his blade across an attacker's chest. Sparks flew as the assassin collapsed. Zera moved beside him, her own blade flashing. She fought with grace and precision, her strikes clean and deadly. Drake grinned. Not bad, princess. She didn't look at him. Focus. More assassins poured in. Too many. Drake grabbed a fallen enemy's rifle and opened fire, covering Zera as she cut down another attacker. One of the assassins aimed at Zera's back. Drake lunged, knocking her aside as the shot barely missed. For the first time, Zera looked surprised. Drake smirked. Told you I was on your side. The last assassin fell, the room finally silent. Drake exhaled. That was fun. Zera ignored his sarcasm. We need answers. Now. She grabbed the nearest fallen assassin and ripped off his helmet. Drake leaned in, studying the alien's face. He wasn't Zolkareth. He wasn't human. Zera's expression turned to stone. This is a member of the Val Syndicate. Drake's eyes narrowed. Who are they? Zera's voice was cold. A faction that profits from war. Drake clenched his jaw. So that's it. They stage all of this to make sure peace never happens. Zera nodded. And if we do not stop them, they will succeed. Drake smirked and twirled the energy blade in his hand. Then I guess we'd better stop them. Zera met his gaze. For the first time, she truly trusted him. The chamber was filled with the smell of burnt metal and plasma smoke. The bodies of fallen assassins lay across the floor. The battle was over, but the real fight was only beginning. Captain Elias Drake wiped a streak of dust from his face and turned to Princess Zera. So let me get this straight. These Veil Syndicate guys are mercenaries who want war. Zera nodded, still gripping her energy blade. They do not serve any empire. They work in the shadows, creating conflicts and selling weapons to both sides. If war begins between the Zolkareth Empire and humanity, They will profit greatly. Drake exhaled. Great. So they framed me, tried to assassinate you. And now they're running loose in the palace. Any more bad news you'd like to share? Zara's expression was serious. This was not their only attack. If they sent assassins here, then they have agents in other parts of the capital, possibly even in the royal council. Drake frowned. You're saying they have spies inside your own government? She nodded. I cannot trust anyone. For a moment, neither spoke. The situation was worse than they had imagined. The enemy wasn't just outside the empire, it was inside. The escape plan. Commander Vakar stepped forward, his face hard with suspicion. Princess, I still do not trust this human. How do we know he is not working with them? Drake rolled his eyes. Oh sure, I totally wanted to get teleported into a hostile empire and almost executed. Sounds like a great plan. Vakar growled, but Sarah raised a hand. Enough. Right now, we have bigger concerns. She turned to Drake. The council chamber is no longer safe. We must leave the palace. Drake frowned. And go where? Zara's eyes darkened. To the Shadow Vault. Drake raised an eyebrow. That doesn't sound creepy at all. Zara ignored his sarcasm. The Shadow Vault is an ancient sanctuary built for times of crisis. It contains records, weapons, and technology that only the royal family can access. If the Veil Syndicate is behind this, we may find proof there. Drake smirked. All right, Princess. Lead the way. Through the burning palace. The group moved quickly through the darkened halls of the palace. The once grand corridors were now filled with the sounds of distant fighting. Smoke and alarms filled the air. Drake's instincts screamed danger. He kept his stolen rifle ready, watching every corner. Then, as they turned a corridor, boom! An explosion ripped through the wall beside them. The shockwaves sent everyone flying. Drake hit the ground hard, his ears ringing. Through the smoke, he saw figures moving, more assassins. Zara was already on her feet, her energy blade glowing. Defensive formation, she commanded. Drake groaned as he got up. Yeah, I got it. He raised his rifle and fired, taking down one of the attackers with a precise shot. Vakar and the royal guards charged forward, engaging the enemy in brutal close combat. Drake ducked behind a broken pillar, taking quick shots at the attackers. Sarah fought beside him, her movements elegant yet deadly. The assassins were strong, but they were not prepared for humans, and Zolkareth fighting together. Drake saw an opening. One of the assassins was aiming for Xera's back. Not today. Drake lunged, tackling the enemy to the ground. The assassin's blade slashed across Drake's shoulder, sending a jolt of pain through him. But he ignored it. With a swift punch, he knocked the assassin unconscious. Zara turned, surprised. You are injured. Drake grinned through the pain. I'll live. Let's move. The Shadow Vault. After more fighting, they finally reached a hidden chamber deep beneath the palace. The entrance was sealed by a massive door, covered in glowing alien symbols. Zara stepped forward and placed her hand on the center panel. The symbols flashed, and with a deep rumble, the door slid open. Inside, the room was filled with ancient technology, holographic screens, old artifacts, and powerful weapons. Drake whistled. Fancy. Xera walked toward a central console and activated it. A hologram appeared, showing records of intercepted transmissions. Her eyes narrowed. Here, look. Drake leaned in. The data showed secret messages between the Veil Syndicate and a high-ranking Zolkareth official. Drake clenched his jaw. Well, that confirms it. You've got a traitor. Zara's face was unreadable, but he could see the anger in her eyes. I should have known. Drake folded his arms. Who is it? Zara took a slow breath. Then she spoke a name. Lord Kelsar. Drake frowned. The guy from the council meeting. The one who wanted to execute me. Zara nodded. He has always been a supporter of war. And now we have proof that he is working with the Val Syndicate. Drake smirked. So, what now? We arrest him. Zara's expression was grim. It will not be that easy. Kelsar controls many of the Empire's forces. If we move against him, he will strike first. Drake exhaled. Great, another problem. Zara turned to him. Captain Drake, I need your help. Drake raised an eyebrow. You're actually asking now. That's new. Zara's lips twitched slightly, almost like a smile. We need to stop Kelsar. And to do that, we must work together. Drake smirked. All right, Princess. Let's take down a traitor. Deep beneath the royal palace, in the dim glow of the Shadow Vault, Captain Elias Drake and Princess Sira stood before the holographic display. The name Lord Kelsar flickered on the screen, along with undeniable proof of his betrayal. Drake crossed his arms. So, Kelsar has been working with the Val Syndicate all along. The guy really wants a war. Zara's eyes were cold. And he will have one, unless we stop him. Commander Vakar, standing nearby, frowned. Princess, Kelsar commands many of the Empire's forces. If we confront him now, he will turn them against us. Drake smirked. So, we don't confront him directly. We trap him. Zara turned to him. Explain. Drake tapped the console. Kelsar thinks he's in control, right? He thinks you'll be too busy dealing with assassins to suspect him. So we make him believe that everything is going according to his plan. Vakar grunted. Deception. That is not the Zolkareth way. Drake rolled his eyes. Yeah. Well, it's the human way. And it works. Zara nodded. What do you propose? Drake's smirk widened. We leak false information, make it seem like you are panicked, like you are fleeing the capital. Kelsar will take the bait and make his move. Zara's eyes glowed with understanding. And when he does, we will be waiting. The web is set. The plan moved quickly. Zara's loyal guards spread false whispers through the palace, rumors that the princess had fled in fear after the assassin's attack. Meanwhile, Drake and Sarah remained hidden in the Shadow Vault, waiting for Kelsar to make his move. Hours passed. The tension was thick. Then, a royal guard rushed into the chamber, his face grim. Princess, it has begun. Zara straightened. Report. Kelsar has gathered his forces. He is claiming that the royal family is compromised, and for the safety of the Empire, he is taking control. Drake smirked. Called it. Vakar clenched his fists. That traitor. He dares to declare himself ruler. Zara's expression was unreadable. Not for long. She turned to Drake. You wished for a trap. Now it is time to spring it. The battle for the throne. Kelsar stood in the grand throne room, surrounded by his most loyal generals. His forces had taken control of the palace, and the throne was his for the taking. The doors swung open. A group of guards marched in, dragging a figure in chains. A cruel smile spread across Kelsar's face. Ah, the human. Drake was shoved forward by the guards. He smirked up at Kelsar. I gotta say, your hospitality sucks. Kelsar chuckled. Do not worry, Captain. Your suffering will end soon. He turned to his generals. The princess is weak. She has fled. The Empire needs strong leadership. We will crush humanity before they have a chance to strike us first. Some generals hesitated, but the princess still lives. One of them said, without her, we... Kelsar cut him off. She is unfit to rule. She will be remembered as a coward. Drake sighed loudly. You know, for someone so smart, you sure walked into this trap easily. Kelsar's eyes narrowed. What? The holographic display behind him suddenly flickered to life. Zara's face appeared, her golden eyes filled with cold fury. You dare to call me a coward, Kelsar. Her voice rang through the chamber. You dare to betray the Empire. The room fell silent. Then, The doors exploded open. Zera and her elite royal guard stormed in. Plasma blades ignited. Blasters fired. The battle for the throne had begun. Drake versus Kelsar. Chaos erupted. Soldiers fought, energy blades clashed, and blaster shots sizzled through the air. Drake used the distraction to break free from his captors. He grabbed a fallen weapon and turned to face Kelsar. Kelsar sneered. "You think a mere human can challenge me?" Drake grinned. "Let's find out." Kelsar drew his own energy sword and charge. Drake barely dodged the first swing, rolling to the side. He came up firing, but Kelsar deflected the shots with inhuman speed. Drake narrowed his eyes. "All right, you're fast. Let's see if you're smart." Kelsar lunged again, his blade slicing toward Drake's neck. But Drake had been waiting for this. At the last second, he sidestepped, and Kelsar's own momentum carried him straight into a steel pillar. The traitor stumbled, dazed. Drake didn't hesitate. He slammed the butt of his rifle into Kelsar's head, sending him crashing to the ground. Kelsar groaned, trying to get up. But Zera was already there, her blade pointed at his throat. "It is over, Kelsar," she said coldly. Kelsar's face twisted with fury. "You are a fool, Zera. You think this ends with me." Zera's eyes darkened. "You will not live to see what comes next." With a swift motion, she struck, knocking him unconscious. Victory, but at what cost? The battle was over. Zera's forces had taken back control. The remaining traitors surrendered. Drake dusted himself off. "Well, that was fun." Zera turned to him. "You fought well, Captain." Drake smirked. "You're not bad yourself, Princess." Vakar approached. "What do we do with Kelsar?" Zera's expression was unreadable. "He will face trial for treason." Drake stretched his arms. "So, what now?" Zera met his gaze. "Now we prepare. Kelsar may be defeated, but the Veil Syndicate is still out there." Drake grinned. "Sounds like another adventure." Zera nodded. "And I will need an ally for what comes next." Drake chuckled. "Lucky for you, I happen to be available." Zera's lips twitched into a small smile. "Then let us begin." The royal palace stood in eerie silence. The battle was over, but the wounds it left behind were still fresh. The traitor, Lord Kelsar, had been captured, but his final words echoed in Princess Zera's mind. "You think this ends with me?" She knew he wasn't lying. The Veil Syndicate was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Captain Elias Drake stood beside her on the grand balcony, looking over the damaged city below. Smoke still rose from parts of the capital where Kelsar's forces had fought her loyalists. Drake let out a low whistle. "You've got a mess to clean up, Princess." Zera sighed. "It is not just my mess, Captain. The war Kelsar wanted, it is still coming." Drake crossed his arms. "So what's the plan? We've stopped a coup, but the real enemy is still out there." Zera turned to him. "We need to strike first. Before they do." The interrogation. Deep within the palace dungeons, Kelsar sat restrained in a high-security containment cell. His golden armor was gone, replaced by a simple prison uniform. He looked up as Zera and Drake entered. Kelsar smirked. "Come to gloat." Zera's gaze was cold. "You had allies, Kelsar. Tell me where they are." Kelsar chuckled. "You think I will betray them so easily." Drake sighed. "Look, buddy, we can do this the easy way or the hard way." Kelsar leaned forward. "You are too late. Even now, the Veil Syndicate moves forward with their plan." Zera's eyes narrowed. "What plan?" Kelsar laughed. "Do you really think I would tell you?" Drake grinned. "No, but I think he will." Drake pressed a button on his wrist device, and suddenly, the holographic image of a small, sleek starship appeared before them. It was a Veil Syndicate vessel, recently intercepted by Zera's intelligence officers. Kelsar's smirk disappeared. Drake tilted his head. You recognize it, don't you? Zara took a step closer. Tell me, Kelsar, what was on that ship? For the first time, Kelsar's expression showed doubt. You have no idea what you are dealing with. Zara's voice was ice. Then enlighten me. Kelsar hesitated. Then, in a low voice, he said, the Syndicate is preparing something far worse than war. They have acquired a weapon. Drake's smirk vanished. What kind of weapon? Kelsar's eyes darkened. A planet breaker. The hunt begins. Back in the war chamber, Sarah and her closest advisors analyzed the intercepted data. Drake leaned over the console. All right, let's break this down. The Vale Syndicate has a secret weapon, and they're planning to use it. That means we need to find it. Fast. Vakar growled. We should attack them directly. Bring our fleets and crush them. Zara shook her head. No. If this weapon is as powerful as Kelsar claims, a direct attack could be suicide. Drake nodded. Then we do this smart. Infiltration. Espionage. Sabotage. Vakar frowned. The human way. Drake smirked. The effective way. Zara turned to her intelligence officer. Do we have any leads? The officer nodded. Our spies have located a Syndicate command station hidden in the asteroid belt of the Terran system. If they are developing a weapon, the information will be there. Drake grinned. Then I guess we're going asteroid hunting. A dangerous voyage. Within hours, Sarah and Drake were aboard the Revenant, a sleek Zolkirith stealth cruiser. It was one of the few ships capable of slipping past enemy defenses unnoticed. Drake leaned back in the pilot's chair. I gotta admit, your ships are impressive. But can they handle a proper human pilot? Zara raised an eyebrow. Do you even know how to fly it? Drake smirked. Only one way to find out. Zara sighed. You are not touching the controls. Vakar, sitting nearby, grumbled. This is a terrible idea. Drake chuckled. Relax, big guy. It'll be fun. Into the fire. As they neared the Terran system, the ship's scanners flashed red. Zara leaned forward. Multiple enemy signatures detected. The Syndicate is here. Drake whistled. Looks like they brought friends. Zara activated the cloaking field. We must remain hidden. We need to infiltrate the station without being detected. Drake cracked his knuckles. Stealth mission. Right up my alley. Vakar sighed. This is madness. Drake grinned. No, my friend. This is what I like to call a challenge. As the Revenant slipped past enemy patrols and entered the asteroid belt, Drake couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. Because deep down he knew. This was just the beginning. The Terran system was a graveyard of shattered asteroids, their broken forms drifting in silence. Deep within this field of cosmic debris, a dark structure loomed. The Val Syndicate's hidden command station. Inside the stealth cruiser Revenant, Captain Elias Drake, Princess Sarah, and Commander Vakar stared at the massive station from the bridge. Drake let out a low whistle. That's one big fortress. Sarah nodded. And inside, they are preparing to unleash a weapon that could destroy entire planets. Vakar's claws clenched. Then we must act quickly. Drake grinned. Finally, someone who speaks my language. Breaking in. The Revenant drifted closer, its cloaking field keeping it hidden. The station was heavily guarded. Patrol ships hovered around it, scanning for intruders. Drake studied the structure. There. He pointed to a smaller hangar at the station's side. That's our way in. Zara activated the ship's thrusters. Hold on. The cruiser weaved through the asteroids, moving in perfect silence. With careful precision, Sarah guided it toward the hangar's maintenance entrance. Drake smirked. Smooth flying, princess. Zara raised an eyebrow. I told you, I do not need a co-pilot. The ship latched onto the station's external docking port. The hatch hissed open, and the three warriors stepped into the enemy's lair. Inside the enemy's fortress, dim red lights flickered along the metallic corridors. The air smelled of machine oil and ozone, and distant voices echoed through the halls. Drake checked his blaster. "All right, let's keep this quiet." Xera nodded. "We must reach the command center. If the weapon is here, that is where we will find the controls." They moved quickly, slipping past patrolling guards. Vekar took down 2 Syndicate operatives without a sound, his powerful arms wrapping around their throats. Drake smirked. "Remind me not to get on your bad side, big guy." Vekar simply grunted. They reached a security terminal. Xera accessed the system, scanning for the weapon's location. "There," she whispered, pointing at the display. A heavily secured vault was marked at the core of the station. Drake raised an eyebrow. "Of course, it's in the most difficult place to reach." Xera smirked. "Would you expect anything less?" Drake chuckled. "Let's do this." The heart of the station. They moved deeper into the station. As they neared the vault, alarms suddenly blared. Red warning lights flashed all around them. Drake cursed. "They know we're here." Xera pulled her energy blade. "Then we fight." A squad of Veil Syndicate soldiers charged toward them. Blaster fire erupted in the corridor. Xera deflected shots with her blade, moving like a shadow. Vekar tore through the enemy ranks, his massive form crushing armored foes. Drake ducked behind cover, his blaster firing with precise headshots. "Gotta say, I'm getting used to this alien battlefield." After a fierce battle, the last Syndicate soldier fell. Smoke filled the corridor, and alarms continued to blare. Drake turned to Xera. "We better move fast." The weapon revealed. They reached the vault. Xera accessed the controls, bypassing the security lock. The door hissed open, revealing the weapon inside. It wasn't just a bomb. It was a super weapon core, a device capable of turning an entire star into a destructive force. Drake's eyes widened. They weren't just going to destroy planets. They were going to collapse suns. Xera clenched her fists. "We cannot let this fall into enemy hands." Suddenly, a voice echoed behind them. "I couldn't agree more." They turned. Standing in the doorway was Kelsar, flanked by elite Syndicate enforcers. Drake's jaw tightened. "Oh, come on. Didn't we lock you up?" Kelsar smirked. "Did you really think I would stay in a cell? The Syndicate has far-reaching hands." Vekar growled. "You will not leave this place alive." Kelsar activated an energy sword, its crimson glow illuminating his sneering face. "Let's test that theory." The final battle. Kelsar lunged at Xera, their blades clashing in a burst of energy. Sparks flew as their swords met in rapid strikes. Drake and Vekar engaged the Syndicate enforcers. Blasters roared, fists collided, and the corridor became a storm of violence. Drake dodged a Syndicate soldier's blade, rolling to the side and blasting his opponent in the chest. One down. Vekar slammed 2 enemies into the walls, his strength overwhelming them. "More will come. We must finish this quickly." Xera and Kelsar's duel reached its peak. Kelsar was strong, but Xera was faster. She sidestepped his attack and drove her blade into his side. Kelsar gasped, stumbling back. "This is not over." Xera's eyes were cold. "Yes, it is." With a final slash, Kelsar fell, destroying the weapon. Drake ran to the super weapon core. "We need to destroy this thing. Fast." Xera nodded. "Stand back." She activated her wrist device, inputting override codes. The weapon began to overload. Vekar's eyes widened. "This station will not survive the explosion." Drake grinned. "Then let's get out of here." Escape and victory. They raced back to the Revenant, Syndicate forces chasing them as alarms blared across the station. The ship's engines roared as they blasted out of the hangar, dodging enemy fire. Behind them, the station shook violently. The overloaded core reached critical mass. And then, boom! The entire station erupted in a blinding explosion, its remains scattered into the asteroid field. Drake whooped. Now that's how you finish a mission. Zera exhaled, watching the flames die in the darkness of space. The Syndicate has lost its greatest weapon. Vakar nodded. And Kelsar is no more. Drake leaned back in his seat. So, what's next? Zera looked at him, a small smile forming. The galaxy is still dangerous, and I will need allies. Drake grinned. Well, lucky for you, I make a great ally. The Revenant soared into the stars, leaving the burning remains of the Syndicate's plans behind. The war was far from over. But for now, humanity had won.